Hey guys, Unexceptional Rounder here, and welcome to part 2 of the Leakfinder for Rello. And let's get on with it. We'll pick up right where we left off, and we'll just go through these hands, see if we can pick out any errors. I think overall you're playing really well. Your starting hands and everything. I mean, there's definitely you looks like you've got a lot of the basic concepts down, and I think that there's just a few holes here and there, but I think that it's fixable. It's not. It looks like you're understanding a lot of the concepts, and I actually think that once I start bringing a lot of the theory videos that I've got planned and half made here and there. That I think those will be really helpful because I'm again, I kind of apologize. I've been putting off a lot of videos because I've just been, as I'm getting into them, I want to make them very, very good. And so I'm almost done. Well, I'm actually done with it. I just have to actually make the video for some pre-flop opening ranges that I came up with for 6 max. Well, I came up with, I actually watched a few videos and got some ideas from some professionals on one of the paid coaching sites. But looked for some kind of more aggressive opening ranges, and it's going to be a little bit. It's going to seem a little crazy at first, but the ranges are much wider. And then, in addition to that, we're going to be delving into all sorts of other pre-flop specific situations, not just the starting ranges. That's going to be the first thing, but there's going to be a whole slew of other things we get into, and I think a lot of that stuff will really benefit the other players down here at 4NL, because I think a lot of it is if you guys are just kind of watching my stuff, I mean, most people probably aren't, but get out there, watch other stuff. Get as much as you can, read books. As good at poker as you want to be is how much study and time and effort you put into it. So I've got a ton of stuff that I've got planned, but it takes a while to put all that together. So be hungry for more knowledge. And yeah, it's a good raise size. I like this. You got this fish to your left posting dead money in with an 80-cent stack. That's awesome. Here we've got the four-handed. We didn't have a hand. I'm okay with checking this one back. I mean, I don't see a lot of value in betting here. Yeah, that folds fine. Yeah, and the guy, I can't believe. I didn't see if that all got. I'm not gonna rewind it. I don't know if that all got in on the flop, but I certainly hope that it didn't all go in on the turn, because if he thought he had two pair and didn't realize that his threes were counterfeited, then that's pretty funny. Yeah, I've been going through my own Holdem manager and trying to look at a lot of different stuff. How'd that pocket so big? I didn't even see that. Sorry. Um. Oh, you were just looking at your cards. You weren't in that. We'll just skip ahead. See if I can just sort of get through a few hands. Again, just reiterate, I think if you don't want to min raise on the button, I think 2.5x is fine. If you got some really specific reason that you want to raise bigger than that, I really would not go bigger than 3 times the big blind from the button. You're going to be opening so many hands, and what it does is the smaller bet allows you to call a lot more 3-bets, and people tend to like to 3-bet button raises. So if you make a smaller raise, you're still very deep. You can call a lot more 3-bets in position. I like this. If he shoves, you're calling. It's just he bought back in for 50 cents. Easy folds. Skip ahead a little bit here. I just want to get through the end of the video and keep this current video to about 30 minutes. So that's why I'm just trying to push through any unplayable hands. Again, yeah, I don't think you need to raise 4x, but it's just a small correction. And here you end up playing heads up with this guy. 4x with ace 10 I think is fine. Blind versus blind. Raising a little bit bigger gives him, you want to give him a little slightly worse odds to call, and we'll skip till you've got 2 tables up here. So yeah, blind versus blind, if you've got, ace 10, ace jack, a hand that you don't really want him to 3-bet, but you want to kind of, put a little more pressure on, then I think 4x is fine. 3x is okay with pretty much as a standard though. Blind versus blind. And here, very easy call. You're going to be in a multi-way pot with 8s. I think 8s are exponentially better than like 4s and 2s here, because 8s are going to get set over set a lot more. Like if that flop was ace 8 deuce, I mean, I'd have no issue getting all in on every flop. If it goes raise, re-raise, re-raise, your 8s are probably still good. If you've got 2s there, I'm not as confident. Yeah, looks like you got a raise. You probably fold that 10 jack. 10-9 on the button should be an open. Yeah, see, like, this is just very, and I know that most players won't. Let me try to explain a little bit why. Other than calling 3-bets, let me explain another kind of reason why that's just very, very exploitable. And despite the fact that most players aren't, looking for exploitable tendencies at this level, if you're raising to 4 times the big blind on the button with the large number, with say 40% of your hands, or even if you're tighter on the button and you're only playing 35%, if you're only calling the 3-bets with 10% of those, or even less, maybe 8 or 7%, maybe even only 5% for some people, then they're going to take that pot down just 80% of the time. You're going to fold to their 3-bet like 80 or 90% of the time. And that's going to be really, really profitable for them to be 3-betting you. So by making it bigger, you're making it more profitable for them to 3-bet. If you only make it, 8 or 10 cents, then they don't win as much every time they 3-bet. And therefore, you can actually fold a lot more often. And not only can you fold more often without losing as much money, because you're going to make a lot of it when you steal blinds, but you can actually call more because their 3-bet sizing usually will be smaller. So it just does a lot. It makes the it can seem like it's going to be more complicated because people might call more often, but you can always kind of fall back on the fact that you are in position. So, playing pots in position, deep relative to the pot is usually going to be a good thing, especially as you get better at hand reading and everything else. So I hope that kind of clears up the question about the smaller raise on the button, because I think I'd seen a comment in one of my other videos about someone didn't like it or didn't understand it, and that's sort of the rundown on the min raise or the smaller raise on the button. And it looks like your standard is just 4x from everywhere, and I think that's kind of a little bit of a leak. So I think, I don't know if you've changed up your game since this video. I know it took a while to get out, and I've talked about bet sizing and a lot of stuff since then. So hopefully you know now. I don't know if... So let me go back here. So, okay, we just got one opponent. Yeah, I think c-betting here is all right. Let's think about it, though. So, is there anything we're getting value from? Well, this guy's an 88-38. So there's hearts, there's ace-4, there's 5s, 3s, 2s. I mean, I don't think, he probably doesn't call with 3s or 2s, honestly, even as fishy as he looks. So ace-4 might call once. Some hearts are going to call. He does have a lot of 10s and jacks in his range, though. I mean, he's got such a large range that's sort of a stupid thing to say. I'm trying to figure out if the bet is the best way to play this. The thing you'd have to really figure out is, how do you proceed on the turn, and what 10? You've only got 8 hands on this player, so it's really tough to tell after only 8 hands. I think as a standard, betting is all right. The only issue with betting is that a lot of his draws might raise, and we're going to be forced to fold to a lot of hands that are worse than ours. At the same time, they have a ton of equity against us anyway. So the hands that are calling, the 10s, the jacks, the 4s, and I think I'm getting towards how I feel about the flop bet. And this is something, this isn't like, oh, you're doing this wrong. This is something I've been actually finding in my game a lot, and which is why I wanted to pause and talk about it a little bit. But let's say that his calling range is, any jack that he has, so like he's going to have a ton of, ace jack's the top of his range, obviously. The bottom is like jack 8, 10-8, stuff like that. That stuff has us crushed, right? Our only outs are another 6. So he's going to call with all that. And then the stuff that we're beating, ace 4, well, that has ace outs against us, plus, ace and 4 outs. So yeah, we do have that in good shape, but it's going to be hard to play anyway for both of us after the flop. And then the heart draws have a significant amount of equity against us. So the stuff we're beating, we are barely beating for the most part, and there's very little hands that we beat. The stuff that's beating us, obviously kind of has us crushed, and so we're getting value from very, very few things that don't have a lot of equity against us. Because of that, I think this may be a really good spot for a delayed c-bet. Because once we get to the turn, if we check back the turn and he checks to us again, well, now if he's got hearts, he doesn't really have the odds to call. We dodged the scariest thing, which is another heart, and everything's going to play a little more straightforward. If we bet the turn, he's most of the time going, if he checks to us on the turn and we bet, he's usually going to check to us on the river, and then we can just check back and get to showdown. And then if he comes alive on the turn and raises, no problem, we're done. If he goes ahead and leads the turn, I think we're probably done. So I think that by checking back this flop, we will simplify this hand. But anyway, I kind of went on about that. I wanted to work it out in my own head, but we'll see what happens here. Overall, I think that this is an interesting spot because, you know, my standard and a lot of people's standard is just, oh, we'll just bet here. We'll bet. But I think a lot of times that bet can be a little bit troublesome because it's like, well, what are we really getting value from? At first, it looks like we're getting value from a bunch of stuff. But, you know, do we really, and ironically, you know, we got value from the 4 in his range, like the one thing that we were getting value from. But, you know, at the same time, I think that we can actually, you know, check back there and then, you know, bet some turns once it's a little safer, and then get those hands to pay when they really don't have the equity to call. So that's sort of how I think that's how I feel about that. I think that's a great spot for a delayed C bet because I don't think you don't have enough equity that you need to protect your hand. You need to protect your stack. So I hope that makes sense. If you guys have questions about it, you know, comments below. Great place for that. Get my cursor out of the way here. Let's see if we can get to the next hand. King 3 should fold that. 9-10 and the big blind. We'll see how that plays out. Oh, that's going to be a fold. Ace-10, here we go. I'll tell you, it's really, really interesting if you go back through your hands, go back through your database, go back through all your old hands, and, you know, walk through every little step of each hand. Okay, what do I think that this guy is going to call me with here? And, you know, you can be pretty vague at first, but even if you're pretty vague, by the time you get to the river, it's hard to be really vague because you'll find that people's ranges are pretty defined by the river. It's always surprising, you know, when people always seem kind of like, you know, impressed / surprised when I call out, you know, what somebody has. And you know, I don't do it all the time, but you know, sometimes I'll put the guy right on the pocket pair he has, or the certain hand he has, or the draw that he missed, you know, when I'm snapping off, you know, a bluff on the river or something. And that stuff looks all great when it happens in action, but the reason that I knew that was because away from the table, I went through hand after hand after hand after hand, you know, analyzing how people play. You know, something I heard the other day that was really it was like someone was actually quoting someone else. I forget all the names, I apologize, but you know, there's two things that you can study in poker. You know, there's kind of two you know, there's two ideas here. So one is how to play the hand the best way. Right? So like, let's say the cards were face up, like we'll call this like, you know, Skolansky way of play. Like if the cards are face up, what is the best way to play this hand, knowing what this guy has or knowing what his range is even. And then the other thing is knowing how to read people's hands, right? So like, even if you're really great at reading hands, and I do this all the time, I say, okay, I think this guy has this, this, and this, and I think I can get him to fold this and this. And then I go ahead and make that bet, and he calls with one of the things I said I thought he would fold. So it's like, okay, great. I read his hand pretty well, but I didn't execute it well because, you know, I screwed up the execution part. And, you know, those are the two parts. So the way you get really good at hand reading is one, by studying the hands and going through everything. But a lot of it is, you know, playing a lot. If you play a lot, you know what types of things people do. You know what types of hands people play with. If you go through, you know, the hand range and stuff off the screen, you get a lot more of that too. You know, you look at what you think their hand ranges are and then what they actually show up with, and then you kind of slowly adjust. This King 10 suited, I don't really like that call that much. This guy's a 35-17. He's pretty loose. I wouldn't mind 3-betting him there. I'll bet he's opening pretty wide from the cutoff, so you could 3-bet with King 10, and I'd like that. But calling with King 10 suited, you take it or leave it. It's all right. Once he checks to you, again, these players seem really weak. So once he checks to you, fire a bet out, see if you can take it down. It worked out, not a problem. Probably not a huge issue either way because you are calling with position. But I don't know. I don't even know what hands I call with in position. I've been changing my ranges up so much lately that maybe King 10 suited's fine. Like I was saying, you get very, very good at hand reading on and off the table, but it's sort of like playing with people's ranges, adjusting them. Then the way you get very, very good at figuring out how to make the most money once you have those good reads is stuff like Poker Stove. Going in and taking that perceived range that now is very good and figuring out what the most profitable way to play against that perceived range is. Because, let's say what hands the player calls with, but you don't realize that those hands are a favorite to what you have. Like the hand we were talking about a couple minutes ago with we don't realize that we don't actually have a ton of equity against the stuff we beat. If we realize oh wow, we don't really have a ton of equity against the hands we beat, we don't realize that it may or may not be a good spot to bet because we haven't done that work away from the table. So if we can kind of, combine the ability to hand read with the ability to execute properly, that's, how you start narrowing in on this really kind of advanced, very, very high quality play. And so that's something that, you're going to see you're going to see me working on that. I'm going to bore you guys to death with videos of me just reviewing hands because, I can kill 2 birds with 1 stone. I can study and go over hands and learn a bunch and put out videos for those of you that want to partake in that as well, because I know that those videos aren't as popular because they're not as fun and exciting, but the guys who really want to get better, those are the ones that they're going to enjoy the most. So I will start doing a bunch of that, not a bunch of it, but I'll definitely record a few of my review sessions. I've set up some like filters to look at certain hands, and what I'm going to do is every either 500 or 1,000 hands, I'm going to just go through those filters and look through those hands and take notes. And that's how you really. I remember when I moved up through 10 NL to 100 NL the last time. That's one of the things I did every session is I would pull up Holdem Manager, or at the time Poker Tracker maybe might have been what I was using. I would pull it up, go through my hands, look at all the big pots, take some notes. Okay, I remember for a while I thought I had this huge leak. I was like, man, I keep getting stacked when I have overpairs on the flop. And this was at 10 NL or 10 or 25 NL. I was like, oh my gosh, I keep screwing this up. Because it probably happened like 4 or 5 times when I first moved up. And I saw this as like a pattern, and I really thought, I was like, man, I'm really screwing this up, because I kept getting 3-bet on flops and getting all in with like aces and kings as overpairs to people's sets. Now, I don't remember the specifics, so I can't tell you, whether or not it was right or wrong in general. But, when you review hands, you see all this different stuff that's happening. So, at first I was like, man, I'm running bad. And then it happened a few more times. I was like, oh no, I'm supposed to be folding over pairs on the flop. So, I will say, be careful that you don't, at the time I probably wasn't going through their entire range and all the things I'm talking about. I was probably just kind of being results oriented. Oh, I lost this pot, so it must have been wrong, type of thing. So, make sure you're actually working out, not just like, oh, I lost money here, this didn't work at this time. Like a lot of these plays that I'm correcting Rello on, he's actually won the hand. And so that's great. I'm glad he's winning the hands. But it doesn't mean the play is necessarily correct. And that's the same thing with my own play. Just because I win or lose a hand, I tend to focus on hands I lose. But it's also important to just kind of look at the hands that you win also, because a lot of times you'll find you're making mistakes in hands you win just as much as the ones you lose. So that's the one thing I'd kind of caution you about. Don't be results oriented. Actually work out the ranges, work out what you think people are doing, and then adjust. If you find that, okay, well, I think people raise this, and this here, and then you go through your hands and you're like, well, I haven't actually found that. If you put in a filter. If you find a situation and you're like, wow, I really don't know what this guy's doing, lay out what's going on in that situation. Okay, the guy's out of position. He's leading for this amount. Let me search my database, see if this has ever happened before, and see what the pattern is. And pretty quickly you can find that, if some situation has happened, 7 or 8 times, and every time it's a set, then, maybe your read was wrong. And maybe when people do this is what it typically means. So I don't know. That's stuff to look at. This call's all right. One thing I was talking to Shark about a little while ago was, calling with pairs to a single raise to when guys are short. I think that one's fine. You're in position and sixes are strong. So that one's fine. Again, I think 3-betting is probably okay too. Mix in some light 3-bets. No problem. And, ace-3. That would have been a nice 3-bet also. You've got the ace as the blocker. He's open like a few hands, and I think that would have been a good spot for a 3-bet. I definitely would have 3-bet there. Or I don't know that I would have, but I think that was a good spot to throw in a light 3-bet. Ace-3, or small aces are great light 3-bet and light 4-bet hands, because you've got the ace as a blocker, which means it's less likely they have one, and probably better as a 4-bet bluff, because people, well, maybe at 4NL people might call 4-bets, but generally once you 4-bet, somebody's either shoving or folding. If you get called, people call 3-bets, and having ace-3 offsuit in a 3-bet pot isn't always great, but I don't know. You can hope for a decent flop, make your C-bet, and move on, or a lot of times you'll just get the fold. I think the first coach I ever had is actually Fender Jaguar. If any of you guys are ever in my live stream, he sometimes pops in there and says hi, but he's I forget what his name on there is, but on Deuces Cracked, he's Fender Jaguar. And he still coaches, but he was the first guy I had that coached me a while back. And he said, when he used to play 1-2, he used to kind of joke around about there being like a button that was like, give me $10 button. And he said that was the button, that was his 3-bet. He was like, yeah, it was cool. There was just this button where you could just be like, oh, give me $10. And that was what he did, is he would just 3-bet all the time and make $10 at a time or $9 at a time, whatever it was, when somebody opened, because people were just folding the 3-bets that often. So I think that's one thing I haven't been doing that much, and I've been finding that it's very, very profitable. Maybe once you move up a little bit, it's not quite as profitable, but if you notice people are folding when you have good hands to your 3-bets, start mixing in some light ones, because it tends to work pretty well. Yeah, I probably wouldn't open shove the ace-9 suited, but that was just a misclick, I know. So getting towards the end of this video also, and almost towards the end of the entire your whole all the video that you uploaded. So all right, top pair, here we go. And let's talk again. I think you're probably gonna c-bet this, which is fine. I think like I would probably advocate c-betting this, but since we're watching a video and we can analyze, let's just take a look and figure out what exactly we're getting value from and what hands might be folding and why. So this time, let's go ahead and just start real quick with what are some good hands to get to fold here. 10 Jack, Jack Queen, anything with a 10 Jack Queen King in it, right? So like anything that has a lot of equity against us, which is any overcards. It's fine to just get those to fold right here, because the problem is, and sort of thinking as I talk here, but one of the things that happens is if they hit one of those cards later on in the hand, the pot's already bigger, which makes it a more complicated situation and can make it more expensive. Right now the pot's small and it's controllable. We've got the right pot size for our hand. We do want to get those hands to fold because we don't want to have to deal with a queen coming off on the turn and somebody leading into us. I mean, that's just an ugly situation. So we want those hands to fold. That's one reason to bet. And then we also want to look at, well, do we get anything worse to call? And what I'll go ahead and say is that if all we're doing is getting hands with a bunch of equity to fold, that's not always a bad thing. So we don't have to have worse hands calling us, but I think we do here. We've got, the ace fives, the ace fours. Even though we have an ace, those are going to be in their ranges. Let's see, 64-21, 5-6, diamonds. Pretty much any two cards with diamonds, and I don't think I don't think King Queen of Diamonds is going to fold here on the flop, but we do get some value from it when we bet and it calls. So those are the hands that we can get value from, and any overcards. So I mean, again, my initial instinct was go ahead and bet, but it's good to sometimes kind of break down, and that wasn't even that in depth. Like if I was doing like a hand history review, like a detailed one in Holdem Manager, I might go ahead, get out Poker Stove, actually break down, the types of ranges, a few ranges, and actually kind of go into, the merits of each decision. Just because the more you do it, again, the more repetition, the better you're going to get at it, and the more clear it's going to become. But right off the bat, I can say a bunch of diamonds might call, a few overcards might call, and I don't mind if they fold. So we can get value from all those hands that we want to fold, and they have equity against us, so it's not bad to get them to fold. Now, at the same time, what hands do we have a bunch of equity against? So, like we had this situation happen in the first video. If you guys haven't seen that, check it out. I'll have a link at the very beginning of this one probably to it. So make sure you watch that though if you haven't. So what we talked about in the other one was that I think we had like a second or third pair maybe, and we bet out or an under pair to like we had a pair, but there were two cards above us, and we were, in that situation, almost all the hands that called either were beating us or had a ton of equity. In this situation, there are more hands that can call that have less equity, and we also have like redraw possibility. We have an ace, which is very, very good because a lot of the equity comes from other people with aces that might have aces in their range, the ace of diamonds. So in this situation, there's enough stuff that we are ahead of that it makes sense to bet. Whereas in the other situation, there were a lot of calling hands that were ahead of us. And, here we've got, 10s, jacks, queens, and sets. Don't forget about sets, but yeah, and sets are still in there also. But that probably isn't enough to make it a check here. So anyway, I'm sure you're probably going to go ahead and bet out. You do. But, know why we're betting. Okay, so perfect. All right. So that's a good thing. So hopefully we considered what happens if we get raised here before we got raised. What is his raising range? He's, the Jedi Master. He's 64-21. What kind of hands does he raise with? All right, so let's go ahead and work through something real quick. I've got Poker Stove pulled up, and this video is going to go a little longer than I wanted to, but that's okay. I want to kind of show you guys something that that is important. All right, so he is playing 64% of his hands. That says voluntarily put money in pot. So you know, he is calling an under the gun range, but just to be fair, if he is that's a lot. So let's go ahead and just say like maybe he's folding 10% more. Now this is Poker Stove's, you know, top 55% of hands. I don't think this is his calling range, because I think his calling range would be distributed a little bit differently. Like I think, you know, these hands would probably be in it, whereas like 9-5 suited, or, you know, these maybe not as much. Maybe they are. Jack 3 suited, probably not. You know, so I think it's a little bit different than this. But let's get an idea of what, you know, even 50% of the hands look like, okay? That's 50% of the hands. That is the visual. That's what it looks like. Let's talk about his value range raising the flop. Okay, so let's clear this out. So for value, all right, what is he raising? 4s, 5s. The other 2 9s in the deck, which is the diamond and the spade. All right, so, oh, he only has 1 combo of 9s. Yeah, he's got, you know, whatever the 5. I think it'll automatically do it when I put in the flop. So those are value. He somehow has 9-5 suited. 4-5 suited, I think, is in his range. I think 4-5 off. Stretch. I'm not going to give that one to him. 9-5 off. Nope. And then, so we've got sets there. And then, remember all those suited cards we had over here when we had 50%? All those versions of diamonds. So there were a whole bunch. What I'm going to do to sort of, well, I guess that won't work. But as far as combinations go, you know, this is what we're looking at. You know, maybe 10s. I'll throw 10s in his range also. I think it's a little aggressive, but he could have, you know, decided not to 3-bet. Maybe even he has jacks. That seems extreme though, right? Most players are 3-betting, but you know, he's just super passive and he's calling 10s and jacks. Those are about the only hands that have value here, right? You know, ace 9 offsuit doesn't really make sense to 3-bet. So when we look at the number of hands that, all right, so remember the visual of all the hands, even add this one in, sure. So out of those 50 hands, you know, 50% of hands, 3.4% have value. That's let's see. So about 6, almost 7% of the time, because 50%, you know, 3.4%, 50%, you know, like 7% of the time, he has a value hand here. And, well, sorry, not 70% of the time, 7% of the time, he has a made hand for value. The rest of the time, he has a draw or a worse hand or something that isn't displayed here. You know, that is, for a guy playing that many hands, I just think that there are a ton of diamonds in his range. And you know what? I haven't seen this hand yet, so now I'm kind of excited to see what happens here. I think Rella's probably going to fold, if I had to guess, but I'm thinking, I mean, just from a combination standpoint, when he's got 50% of the hands in his range, and maybe he's just playing like an idiot. Maybe he's raising king 9 here. I don't know. You know, I don't know, But, you know, these could be in his range. You know, king 9 with the 9 of diamonds. It's tough to tell. But because of that, when we think about, you know, the real likely hands also, I mean, the likely ones are those. You know, those are the ones that kind of make, those are the ones that he flips over and you're like, okay, he had the 4s. Okay, he had the 5s. He had the 4-5 suited. I mean, I'm not ever calling 4-5 suited with, but Jedi Master probably is. And then you look at that, that's 1.3% out of that 50%. So I just want to kind of go through the combinations. Now you can also go ahead and plug in. The reason it's kind of a pain to plug in the equity in this situation versus all the draws is like, let's say we took all his draws here, and we'd have to go through each one and click on it and just pull out the diamonds to get it. So I don't really want to do that, but anyway, you know, we could go through and, you know, boom, boom, add those. Oops. 4-5, 4-5, 4-5, 6, 4. All that 9-5. Take that one out. Apply that. You know, we could grab that. Grab all these that are just diamonds. Let's just go ahead and grab a few here. King 10 diamonds. 9 diamonds. Apologize for the video being a little long. All right, we'll grab, you know, oh, and he's obviously, you know, obviously he's doing that with the, I mean, you know, sometimes we'll leave a spade in there, you know, sometimes he's going to do it with something like that. Could have ace 9 of diamonds. That hand would make sense, right? Like that hand makes perfect sense. But he's got all these aces with diamonds. So anyway, I just don't want to grab them all. So if we look at like all the aces with diamonds, everything that he has with that's 2 diamonds, you know, we could go ahead and apply that and hit OK. There's probably a program that can do this a little bit better. And then we can evaluate this and see what our range is against, you know, you see it's plugged in all the diamonds and then the 4-5. So this is like all diamonds and stuff like that. And we're slightly ahead of that range that I grabbed. But that range had just a bunch of overcards and like stuff that wasn't 2 diamonds, which is kind of interesting, right? Like if and the problem is he has a lot more hands here. Like remember, let me go back to this. That's 50% of hands, you know, according to so he's probably more weighted. He probably loves suited cards. So like I'm telling you, like he's got, you know, these guys in there instead of, you know, some of these probably. He's probably got all the aces. So if you look at all these suited, you know, those are all potentially, you know, the diamonds, the diamond draws, compared to that very, very few 4-5 9s, 4, you know, this type of thing. That's like the value, the made value. And we've got outs against, you know, these two. So, you know, it'd take a long time. I know I've already taken a long time, but I'm not going to go through and just plug in all the diamonds. I don't know yeah, I don't know a way to do that, unfortunately. So I guess I could just, can I do this? Just click on, no, I don't. Huh. All. And then I guess, yeah, I don't, sorry, I don't. Okay, cancel. Anyway, something to think about, the number of you know, bluffs or semi draws he's got here compared to the number of actual, you know, made hands that have us crushed. Something to think about. So see what happens. I'm guessing this is a fold, but you don't have a whole bunch of hands on this guy. Looked like he'd check raised at least once before. Interesting. The call. That's going to make the turn very hard to play. I mean, if you call that flop, I think you have to call a bet here on the turn. I think you have to call this because, and that queen actually connects with all the diamonds that had queens. That's going to be difficult, right? Because like there were a bunch of suited queens in there that might have been diamonds that he easily could have had. So we've got to kind of think that there's a good chance that queen may have hit. I think he's shoving any turn though, so I really do think that, you know, once you call the flop raise, if he's shoving 100% of turns and you called the flop, you have to be prepared to call the turn, which I think may be the right play here. I think that enough of his range is made up of diamond draws and, you know, worse hands theoretically. Yep, there it is. Nice call. Really well played. Wow, that's an awesome hand to finish on, Rello. And the thing is I had all that time to go and plug all that stuff in and figure it out. I definitely could not have figured that out at the table. So that's really, really well played. I don't know if you sort of just put them on the diamonds and went with it or what, but that's an awesome hand to finish the video out on. So I think that kind of, I mean, yeah, again, it looks nice when you know, we kind of call what happens and things go like that. But if he showed up with pocket fours, that's okay too. You know, it's okay when that happens, as long as we know that, as long as we have an idea of when it happens. So, you know, I'll pull this up again. You know, if you go through and you think about what these numbers mean, you know, what this, you know, now 67, what 67% of hands looks like. I don't know how you play that many hands. I don't know how you get excited about throwing money in with 10-6 offsuit or 9-4 suited. Again, this probably isn't his exact 67%. He doesn't have a hand chart in front of him, but, you know, and if you go ahead and clear and just say, bam, any suited, and you're like, okay, he has, you know, this many diamond draws and this many value hands. So it's the percentage of times he has, you know, real value is like this 9-5 and these guys compared to all these. So, I mean, I don't blame the other guy for getting in with 9-6 suited either with the diamonds. So I don't think his play was terrible, but I just think that, you know, based on his range, you need to consider playing differently than you would against a guy that was playing 23-17 or 23-20. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I definitely enjoyed that last hand. Thank you so much, Rello, for sending me this video. If you guys want to be featured in a Leakfinder, you know, best way to do it is either, you know, show up, say hey on Squeeze Play. Let me know that you're a subscriber or a Facebook follower or whatever, Facebook liker. I don't know what it is. But, you know, shoot me a message on Facebook or on Twitter when I'm doing the Squeeze Play Friday nights, and link me a video and I'll go ahead and potentially do a review on it. One last thing, guys, before I cut out here for the outro is this Friday on Squeeze Play, I'm going to be doing a giveaway for a Mophie, what is it called? Hold on. Don't go anywhere yet. Stay here. It's called a Mophie Juice Pack Plus, and it's like a cell phone case that charges your phone. I've got a few of them, so I'll probably, you know, I don't know, I might give away more than one, but anyway, it's like $100 value. They sell them on Amazon for like 60, 70 bucks or 80 bucks or something. But anyway, yeah, I'm going to give away one of those on Squeeze Play this Friday. So if you guys have an iPhone 4, let me know. I think I'll ship it anywhere in the world. I don't really care. I'll ship it anywhere in the world. And you know, just let me know. But yeah, show up. You just got to be YouTube sub, Facebook liker, and then show up for Squeeze Play. I'll do it. I'll post a topic on my Facebook, and I don't know, I'll figure it out. But anyway, if you're there Friday night for Squeeze Play, you'll be able to see it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. I had fun doing it. Again, thanks for the videos, and this is Unexceptional Rounder. You guys keep on grinding.